On the city gate, Fang Hao and Demetra looked at the 800,000 undead army outside the city. The pale skeleton army stretched as far as the eye could see. The orcs, who had been full of confidence and waiting to receive rewards for their contributions, were now weak in the legs and unable to stand up. They were dragged and pulled before barely standing that could barely stand in their respective squads. Sir, the number of orcs is still not enough, Demetra said. Well, I'll have the bone dragon bring some more manpower over later. Fang Hao also realized that the number of orcs was insufficient. After the two discussed for a while, they walked down the city wall, arriving at a large open space outside the city. Fang Hao began to create equipment for the troops. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 404,000 storm fine iron open-faced helmets. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 101,000 military spears. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 202,000 Erlenguard thick leather armored. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 20,200 high-speed hardwood short bows. Obtained 20,200 white steel two-ended greatswords. Wooden root staff. One piece of equipment after another, under the blessing of hundredfold amplification, piled up in the surrounding open space. Then, the bone dragon transported the equipment to the designated troop areas for distribution. Through this equipment production, Fang Hao also discovered a problem. The equipment for melee troops and ranged troops had begun to become unequal. The equipment for melee troops had basically been popularized to blue quality. Both damage and defense had reached level 3. However, the equipment for ranged troops was somewhat lagging behind, except for the high-speed hardwood short bow, the Erlenguard thick leather armor set, and the undead mage's wooden root staff and robes were still of green quality. The assessment of damage and defense was only level 2. Ranged units had demonstrated high combat effectiveness in every battle. It seemed that Fang Hao would also gradually replace the ranged equipment in the next step, so that the difference between melee and ranged equipment would not be too great. They were busy until dusk. Only then did this army of 800,000 gradually replace their equipment. Fang Hao arranged for the bone dragon to make several more trips, and also brought a large number of orcs. Demetra began to conduct army drills. Fang Hao watched for a while, felt that there was nothing for him to do, and quietly left. Returning to the Lord's mansion, Ir was preparing dinner, and Jia followed behind Ir, telling stories she didn't know where she had heard them from. Just as he sat down, hurried hoofbeats sounded outside the door. A heavy sword infantryman dismounted, placing a corpse with a burlap sack over its head outside the door. Lord, Pearl City has sent a corpse, saying it is the vampire Fielding. The heavy sword infantryman said loudly with a salute. The vampire Fielding had been hung up and exposed to the sun for 3 days for the crime of assassinating the human city lord. His body had become a dried corpse under the sun's rays. If Fang Hao didn't have a use for him, Tavik would have directly ordered the corpse to be burned to avoid transporting it back and forth. How is the situation in Pearl City? Fang Hao continued to ask. The heavy sword infantryman replied. Mr. Tavik said everything is going smoothly. Cyril's death has not caused any changes in the city. Fang Hao nodded. All right, you go back. I will find someone to deal with the corpse. Yes, Lord. The heavy sword infantryman mounted his horse again and left the territory. Fielding's corpse remained outside the door. The passing maids carefully avoided it. Fang Hao was about to have someone throw the corpse into the transformation field. But then a new plan came to mind. After eating dinner, a bone dragon landed in front of the Lord's mansion, and He Jing flipped over and jumped down. Lord, well, I have obtained a vampire's corpse here, and I need you to help me interrogate it to obtain some useful information. Fang Hao said, willing to serve you. The two came to the open space where the corpse was placed. He Jing began to draw array patterns, and Fang Hao also ordered people to bring 2 livestock. When blood gathered on the body along the array patterns, Fielding, who had been dead for many days, instantly sat up, his eyes hollow. Lord, ask away, He Jing said. Fang Hao did not hesitate and directly asked, Fielding, how many troops are there in the Shining Moon Highlands? At this time, Fielding's face was charred, and he replied, about 60,000. The Shining Moon Highlands have not counted the number of troops for a long time. There is no specific number. What level has the Red Duke reached? I don't know. Has he broken through to Dark Gold level? No. He Jing then gave Fang Hao a wink, prompting Fang Hao that Fielding State could only answer one last question. When the Red Duke was still the human city lord, where did he hide his lover's body? Fielding's already swollen body paused slightly, as if surprised that Fang Hao would ask this question, but he still answered without hesitation. At the bottom of Lake Tanhu in the Shining Moon Highlands. Point out the location to me. As soon as Fang Hao opened the Lord's book, he saw Fielding's body shatter with a bang. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Lord, did you get the information you wanted? He Jing asked. Fang Hao closed the Lord's book. Yes. Fielding's position in the Shining Moon Highlands is not low, and the information is very useful. This interrogation of the corpse made the original uncertain. Information more specific. The Centaur troops are at 60,000. The Red Duke's rank was not obtained specifically, but he was rank 8 5 years ago, and now he has not reached the Dark Gold level. So he is probably at rank 9 or 10. Not too different from Demetra's orange rank 8. Most importantly, Fang Hao obtained the clue to the last body of the beating heart at the bottom of Lake Tanhu in the Shining Moon Highlands. The location of Lake Tanhu is unclear, but with the name and being within the Shining Moon Highlands, it will not be difficult to find. Lord, are we going to war with the vampires? He Jing asked. When the bone dragon arrived, He Jing saw the newly added troops waiting outside the city, combined with the vampire who was just interrogated. It can basically be inferred that this is going to war with the vampires. Yes. This time we will take the initiative to attack the Shining Moon Highlands. The northern fortress must be strictly guarded to prevent the trolls from taking this opportunity to cause trouble, Fang Hao said. He Jing is a skeleton hero created with 100% loyalty. There is no fear that he will reveal the next step of the plan by telling him that. On the contrary, He Jing's mention at this time made him think of the troll fortress in the north. Strengthen the defense a bit to prevent problems from occurring at this time. Don't worry, Lord, I will arrange it immediately after I go back. He Jing nodded solemnly. Okay, thank you, He Jing. It's what I should do, Lord. There was nothing else for He Jing to do. After saluting, he boarded the bone dragon and returned to the bloody fortress he was stationed at. After sending He Jing away, Fang Hao called Demetra again and told him the information he had just obtained from the interrogation, so that he could be mentally prepared. After handling all the matters, it was already late at night. Fang Hao returned to his room and fell asleep. On the other side, Shining Moon Highlands, Vampire Castle, the Red Duke's face was gloomy, and anger flashed between his brows. Where are they? Where is Fielding? The Red Duke roared loudly, like a mad beast. Bloodthirsty and crazy, from the Shining Moon Highlands to Pearl City. It takes 2 days of travel under familiar road conditions, according to the plan. A batch of residents from Pearl City would have been sent to the Shining Moon Highlands as blood slaves 3 days ago, but now, the blood slaves have not been sent, and even Fielding has lost contact. Even if the Red Duke was unwilling to think about it, he knew that something must have gone wrong. Fielding is more likely to have had an accident. On the throne, the Red Duke's face was covered in bulging veins, his expression twisted and hideous, like a devil that had crawled out of the abyss. I'm asking you a question. Why weren't the people from the original plan delivered? The Duke's voice was chillingly sinister, sending shivers down their spines. Under the Red Duke's fury, the other vampires trembled in fear, their bodies shaking uncontrollably. After gaining power, the Red Duke had become increasingly brutal in the entire brilliant Moon Highlands. There was no one who wasn't afraid of him. Your Grace, this matter has always been handled by Fielding. There must have been some unforeseen circumstances. One vampire spoke up. The Red Duke had strictly forbidden them from interfering with the plan to incite rebellion in Pearl City. Everything was left to Fielding. Therefore, they weren't very clear on the progress of this matter. Now that Fielding had messed things up, and the Red Duke was questioning them, they felt like cursing. Humph. The Red Duke let out a cold snort, his body instantly vanishing from his spot. Reappearing before the vampire the next second, he grabbed him by the neck. His sharp fangs sinking fiercely into his throat, he began to greedily suck his blood. The look of terror appeared on the vampire's face. He wanted to beg for mercy, but no sound could escape his lips. His body quickly withered, and eventually, he went limp as if all strength had left him. He was casually tossed aside. Thump, thump, thump. Seeing this scene, the other vampires' faces turned even paler, and they all knelt on the ground, their legs weak. They could tell that the Duke was very unstable today. He had actually killed another vampire because of fielding. Even when Giovanni, the young master, went missing and died, the Duke hadn't shown such emotions. Perhaps after a full meal, the Red Duke's mood stabilized considerably. I don't want to hear such nonsense again. I want concrete information. The Red Duke's cold gaze swept over everyone. There was a moment of silence. Another vampire spoke up. Your Grace, my men found traces of a struggle on the road, as well as a human corpse in the bushes. It seems someone intercepted and took the blood slaves that were being delivered. The Red Duke raised an eyebrow. Intercepted? Who would intercept people on that road? Didn't you find the corpse of a lowblood? The Red Duke returned to his seat. No, the scene was cleaned up very thoroughly. Everything that could be taken was taken. The human corpse left behind was likely forgotten in the woods, or perhaps not discovered at night. The vampire replied. I see. You've done well. The Red Duke praised casually. Thank you, Your Grace. The Red Duke's gaze swept over the others again, and he continued to ask, who has news about Fielding? The entire hall fell silent again. Regarding Fielding, or rather, regarding Pearl City, it was like a black hole. With so many people, there was no news at all. Anger resurfaced on the Red Duke's face, and he let out another heavy sigh. He said to the blood servant beside him, Go check the faceless man's hut. There should be news back by now. Yes, Your Grace. The blood servant quickly left for the faceless man's hut. Yesterday, the Red Duke had placed an order at the faceless man's hut, and there should be new information today. He didn't make everyone wait long. The blood servant walked quickly. Holding an envelope, he respectfully presented it to the Red Duke. Your Grace, there is news. The Red Duke took it, opened it casually, and began to read. It said, Fielding attempted to assassinate Cyril. The city lord of Pearl City was executed, and his body exposed for many days. Bang! Seeing this news, the Red Duke punched the armrest of his chair. How could Fielding possibly assassinate Cyril? Then he immediately thought it through. There must have been a third person who discovered this matter, killed Cyril, and then framed Fielding for the crime. This way, things became very simple. Pearl City would only focus its attention on the vampires and wouldn't pay too much attention to the mastermind behind it. All right, when you get back, all of you prepare. Prepare to launch an attack on the Undead territory, the Red Duke said directly. The Book of Vampires still had to be retrieved, since the path through Pearl City was blocked. He had lost his patience. He would launch a war and directly seize the Book of Vampires, for who had killed Fielding and disrupted this plan. When the time came to see who became the city lord of Pearl City, he would naturally know. Yes, Your Grace. All the vampires replied and slowly retreated. Silence returned to the vampire hall. The Red Duke propped his chin, seemingly falling into a slumber. The blood servant waited quietly beside him, not daring to make the slightest sound. After a long time, the Red Duke opened his eyes again and said, Prepare the carriage. We're going to Lake Tanho. Yes, Your Grace. The blood servant quickly left to prepare the carriage. Everyone left, and the hall fell silent again. However, a sense of fear involuntarily rose in the Red Duke's heart. During his daytime slumber, he had a dream that the people he had killed were seeking revenge on him, and he kept begging for mercy and feeling ashamed. The woman he had always believed would trust him, this time did not believe him again. The woman dug out his heart, a black heart that flowed with a thick black liquid, emitting a pungent odor. The next second, her 5 fingers tightened, and she directly crushed his heart. This was also why his emotions were so unstable today. Fielding's death was only a small part of it. More than that, it was the lingering sense of fear in his heart. He was afraid that the woman would return and kill him directly. Your Grace, the carriage is ready, the blood servant said. The Red Duke stood up, paused slightly, but then sat back down. Never mind, I'm not going. Double the troops at Lake Tanho. No one, no creature, is allowed to approach. Yes, Your Grace. The next day, early morning, Fang Hao stretched lazily. Woken up by the noisy sounds outside the window, he turned over and got out of bed. Quickly washed up, and then walked directly out of the Lord's manor. Today, the entire territory was unusually busy. Food and weapons, arrows, were already loaded onto carts, and the orcs were performing the final checks. Lord Demeter saw Fang Hao walking over. According to the plan, today was the day Demeter was to set off for the brilliant Moon Highlands. The route had been determined, and the journey between the two locations would take 2 to 3 days. Demeter, this is a sound-transmitting conch, convenient for contacting the territory. Be careful of the Red Duke. If you encounter danger, ride the Bone Dragon back first. Fang Hao handed him the sound-transmitting conch and instructed him. The sound-transmitting conch was retrieved from Fireblade last night. Fireblade was holding the Cold Wind Fortress, and there was no immediate danger, so he took it first for Demeter to use. Don't worry, Lord. This battle will surely be victorious. Demeter's voice was full of confidence. The difference in troop strength was too great. 700,000 attacking 60,000. Demeter was confident he would not lose. Good. I'll wait for your triumphant return. The 800,000 undead army left the territory in a mighty force. They marched towards the direction of Bright Moon Highland. Fang Hao stood on the city wall, watching the army gradually depart for this war against Bright Moon Highland. He entrusted the command to Demeter as the territory's strength grew. He no longer needed to personally oversee every battle. Furthermore, heroes understood command and combat better than he did. He still remembered when he first transmigrated. Clearing beast dens and driving away wolf packs all required him to lead the team personally. Now, he only needed to issue tasks, and heroes in various locations would arrange for personnel to complete them. He could simply be a laid-back lord. Returning to the Lord's mansion, Eir had also prepared breakfast. After waking up, she had been busy making various tools that needed to be taken away. Having been busy until now, her stomach was also starting to feel hungry. Breakfast was served, and Eir specifically made a seafood platter and placed it in front of Fang Hao. She picked up a piece of food that looked like an oyster with chopsticks, dipped it in some sauce, and brought it to Fang Hao's mouth. Master, eat more. It's very good for your health, Eir said softly. Since Fulei's fishery was established, fresh seafood often appeared on the dining table for everyone to enjoy. With Fang Hao's support, the fishery's production had also increased exponentially. Many new types of seafood were also added. Saying seafood isn't quite accurate. It should be like fresh. Fang Hao opened his mouth and ate, and the taste was indeed good. Eir stuffed the remaining few pieces into Fang Hao's mouth, a satisfied smile on her face. When Njia came downstairs for breakfast, seeing the plate with only sauce left, she pouted and questioned the two if they had been secretly eating good things behind her back. Fang Hao and Eir looked innocent, saying, "You're overthinking it." They sat down to eat. Ding. The Lord's book sent a private message notification that he originally thought it was someone he was familiar with. But unexpectedly, it was an unfamiliar name, Qiu Zhishang. The name sounded quite grand. Mr. Fang Hao, I see you are collecting clay tiles, is that right? Seeing the message, Fang Hao was slightly startled. Because of the blood race matter these past 2 days, he had almost forgotten about the clay tiles, although he hadn't posted a purchase request in the regional channel. He had mentioned in various exchange information that he prioritized exchanging for blueprints to produce clay tiles. If there were special needs, they could also private message him for exchange. Yes. Do you have a blueprint for producing clay tiles? I can see what you need, and if I have it, we can exchange, Fang Hao said, after sending the message. He was also happy. As an upgrade material for the level 8 Lord Stonehouse, the clay tiles finally had a lead. Mr. Fang Hao, you misunderstood my meaning. I do have a blueprint for producing clay tiles, but I mean to sell you finished clay tiles, Qiu Zhishang said. Qiu Zhishang was actually quite lucky. A group of refugees arrived at his village a few days ago. After accepting them, the refugees provided him with information about the ruins of a pottery factory. After clearing it, he directly obtained the construction blueprint for a clay tile kiln, and he even obtained 2 at once. He kept one and planned to sell the second one. However, when he found that Fang Hao who was ranked first in the region, was collecting clay tiles. He knew his opportunity to get rich had arrived. He didn't want to trade the blueprint, but instead directly sell the finished clay tiles as a necessary material for upgrading the main city. He wasn't worried about not being able to sell it. He would sell it to Fang Hao first. And after a while, when the other lords gradually reached this level, he could still sell clay tiles to the outside world. As the only person with a production line, Qiu Zhishang would naturally earn a large amount of resources from it, and might even get rich overnight. If used well, it wasn't impossible to surpass Fang Hao. Then how do you want to exchange? Fang Hao continued to ask. How about this? Mr. Fang Hao, 1 white equipment for 1 clay tile, and 5 clay tiles for green equipment, Qiu Zhishang said. Fang Hao was startled when he saw the price the other party offered. He wasn't sure if the other party knew that upgrading from a level 7 Lord Stone house to a level 8 Lord Stone house required 1,200 units of clay tiles. According to his exchange method, he would have to give him 1,200 pieces of white equipment, even if Fang Hao had a 100-fold increase when he upgraded to level 9, level 10, or even higher levels later. Wouldn't he be drained dry? This was more than just asking for a lot. This was trying to swallow the entire Milky Way. Mr. Qiu is really joking. Clay tiles aren't worth much. They're not worth this price. That's not how you calculate it. In this world, the price of an item can only be defined by its scarcity, not its original value. Qiu Zhishang continued. Fang Hao thought for a moment and continued. Exchanging 1 clay tile for finished weapons. This business won't last long. Even if Fang Hao was willing to buy, others couldn't afford it. Hee. Mr. Fang Hao, you sell tens of thousands of pieces of equipment every day, so you naturally don't lack this little bit. To maintain your position as the regional first, you naturally have to spend a little more. He saw that Fang Hao was rich and was openly trying to extort him. Can I confirm the information about your blueprint? Of course you can, clay tile kiln. After Qiu Zhishang finished speaking, a smug smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, looking at the other side. It seemed they were planning to spend a lot and order once. However, when Fang Hao's message came through, it still surprised him slightly. Mr. Qiu, I need to consider it. What's there to consider? Qiu Zhishang was still trying to persuade him, but Fang Hao directly closed the chat between them. Fang Hao understood Qiu Zhishang's idea. Most people would do what Qiu Zhishang did, but Qiu Zhishang's approach was a bit too much. Knowing that Fang Hao was selling a large amount of equipment in the regional channel, he was demanding an exorbitant price. Fang Hao could not accept this kind of behavior. You can trick me, but if you point at my nose and treat me like an idiot, how can I accept it? After eating breakfast, Fang Hao went directly to the Merchant Alliance. Duo Jin was recording something at the counter, and when he saw Fang Hao come in, he put down his work and said, Lord. And morning. Duo Jin. Fang Hao sat down in front of the counter. Get me an order form. Okay, sir. Duo Jin said, taking out an order form from under the counter. Write clay tile kiln construction blueprint on it. Fang Hao said. Duo Jin nodded, picked up a quill pen from the side, and wrote the corresponding name on the order form. The order form required a detailed and accurate name. After filling it in, the Merchant Alliance would set the price according to what you needed, not based on individual arbitrary pricing. The Merchant Alliance had its own rules. Sir, it's already written. There's still another order form, and it's almost nearing its expiration date if you don't use it, Duo Jin continued. Duo Jin, do you know how carved stone slabs are made? Fang Hao asked. Duo Jin apologized and said, Sir, I'm not quite sure about that. Then write sound transmission conch. Let's see how many can be written at most. Fang Hao planned to write sound transmission conch on the last order form. Sir, let's write 5. This number won't delay for too long either. Okay, write it down. Fang Hao chatted with Duo Jin for a couple more sentences before turning around and leaving the Merchant Alliance building, returning to the Lord's mansion. A Minotaur warrior rushed over on horseback. His body was muscular, and a silver treasure chest was tied to his back with a hemp rope. Lord, the chieftain asked me to bring you the treasure chest, and also the map received from the tavern. The Minotaur dismounted, placed the treasure chest on the ground, and took out 2 single-page maps from his chest, which was covered in thick hair. You've worked hard. Sit down and rest for a while. Fang Hao took the maps and placed them on a nearby table. He would collect them after the sweat marks on them dried a bit, that a maid on the side brought fruit wine. And the Minotaur thanked her respectfully and drank it all in one gulp. He opened the treasure chest. Obtained. Black iron round leather knife production blueprint. Black iron corner battle axe production blueprint, green. Unicorn sheep fishing rod production blueprint. Beast tooth stone 12, war coin 72. This treasure chest, transported from Manhwa, contained quite a few items. Black iron leather knife, 1 hardwood, 1 cast iron blocked. Description: a mature and useful leatherworking tool that can increase leather production efficiency. It turned out to be a leatherworking tool. According to the description, it can increase the efficiency of leather production. That it's a very practical tool. Continue to check the second item. Black iron corner axe, 2 wood, 2 cast iron blocks, 1 metal part. Description: a clumsy battle axe that is more lethal when cleaving. A green battle axe. Although it was a new blueprint, it wasn't of much help to Fang Hao. The battle axe equipped by the territory was still the adze axe obtained from Bronze Bull, which was also green and of decent quality. Moreover, the equipped rate of battle axes was not high. There was no need to replace the existing adze axe with the black iron corner axe. Continue to check the last item. Unicorn horn fishing rod, 1 hardwood, 1 white steel ingot, 1 unicorn horn. Description: a fishing rod made from a sheep's horn. A fishing rod. I don't need it here. However, I can ask Fule if he needs it. If he needs it, I can make some. Anyway, I have the 100-fold increase. So setting the production quantity to 2 is basically enough for the entire fishing village to use. Record the blueprints. The beast tooth stone and war coins were also sent to the basement by the maid. The Minotaur was still sitting to the side, his wine glass already empty. Get him another glass. Use a bigger one, Fang Hao said to the maid. Thank you, my lord. Thank you. Rabbit girl. The Minotaur quickly thanked. The rabbit maid smiled and bounced off to get the wine. In traditional orc beliefs, beast folk who are closer to human appearance are less likely to be accepted by other beast folk, like fox and rabbit tribes. They are discriminated against in the orc territories. Here with Fang Hao, the orcs who come must respectfully call them girl or mist. How's business in the Manhwa market recently? Fang Hao asked. Very good. More and more villages are coming to trade, the Minotaur said. Scratching his head, he was just an ordinary Minotaur warrior, responsible for guarding in the tribe. But if you asked him to talk about development or the situation, he couldn't say anything. Okay, where did you get this silver treasure chest? Fang Hao asked again. It was a group of gnolls. Gnolls? Yes. Recently there was a group of gnolls who didn't follow the market rules and robbed passing caravans on the road. The chief got angry and led a team to destroy the gnoll tribe. This treasure chest was found in the gnoll tribe. The Minotaur said to S.O. That's how it was obtained. Only transmigrators like Fang Hao could open treasure chests. Even if Bronze Bull got a treasure chest, he couldn't open it. This had been verified many times with Jia. When they went out to play and got treasure chests, they would bring them back, and only Fang Hao could open them. Okay, that's good too. Fang Hao nodded, still quite approving of Bronze Bull's method. This time, the rabbit maid came over with a larger wine glass, filled with fruit wine. The Minotaur took it with a laugh and took 2 big gulps. Fang Hao continued to chat with the Minotaur, and out of the corner of his eye, he saw Luo Li's little head peeking out from behind the door. Hiss hiss. Luo Li made a signal towards where Jia was sitting. Jia heard the sound, turned her head, and raised her eyebrows curiously. Luo Li flicked her head to the side, as if to say, let's go play. Jia glanced at Fang Hao and shook her head slightly. The two exchanged quick messages with winks and expressions. Fang Hao looked at the more talkative Minotaur next to him and said, and Jia, don't go too far, we'll be going out in half an hour. Oh, okay. And Jia's face quickly lit up with joy, and she hurried out of the Lord's mansion. After whispering a few words to Luo Li, the two quickly left. In less than 5 minutes, the Minotaur bowed and left. Fang Hao also began to examine the 2 blueprints that were sent. Map, Undead Cave category. Single-page map. Description, a map drawn by a traveling merchant, recording the route and terrain of an unknown ruin. It was actually a map of the undead. Isn't this like family not recognizing family? By recording the map using the Lord's book, he could view the location of the map. The Undead Cave was located on the east side of the Mana Market, a certain distance from here, but with the help of the Flying Dragon. This distance wasn't too far. Continue to check the second map. Map, Spider Forest category, single-page map, description, a map drawn by a traveling merchant, recording the route and terrain of an unknown ruin. Check the location on the big map. It was also on the east side of the Mana Market, not far from the Undead Cave. It was very likely that these two maps were recorded by the same person and then sold to the tavern together. Thump, thump, thump. Outside the door, Jia and Luo Li rushed in, covered in dust. They stopped abruptly in front of Fang Hao. "We're not late, are we?" Jia said breathlessly. "No, did you guys fight?" Fang Hao asked curiously, looking at their appearance. The two of them looked a bit disheveled at this time, with Jia's clothes and face covered in dust, and Luo Li looked even more terrifying. Already short, she was not only covered in dirt, but also had a trail of blood running from her nose, which she was constantly wiping with her hand. Hee. No, we were racing horses. We were going too fast and fell," Jia said with a carefree smile. Luo Li wiped her nosebleed while giggling foolishly. Oh my god. Fang Hao was speechless. They had found good partners. They were in this state, and still giggling foolishly. "How old are you? Still messing around? Go clean up. We'll be leaving soon," Fang Hao said, fortunately. Jia was a hero, and Luo Li's rank was also not low. If they were ordinary people, they could have killed themselves playing like this. "Oh," the two replied, and went to wash up. 10 minutes later, Fang Hao, along with Jia and Luo Li, boarded the bone dragon. Behind them were another 10 bone dragons, carrying 74 skeleton trolls wearing troll-heavy armor sets and wielding studded maces and axes, compared to Domitiga's preference for two-handed swords for the grave guards. Fang Hao still felt that skeleton trolls were more useful. Their bodies were taller, which looked intimidating. During the last battle with the Bloody Mountains, the conversion field converted a large number of skeleton trolls. There were quite a few 6th and 7th tier trolls. Fang Hao didn't need to recruit them. There were enough to use. "Depart," Fang Hao ordered. The bone dragons soared into the sky and flew towards the Undead Cave. The wind whistled in their ears. After flying for 40 to 50 minutes, they flew over the Mana Market and were already close to the target location. Below was a city ruin. Vines and vegetation covered it, but the collapsed city walls and ruined buildings could still be seen. Flying over the ruins, the bone dragons landed in front of a mountain wall. The bone dragon landed, scaring away 2 grazing wild deer. Several people leaped down from the bone dragon's back, and Fang Hao quickly scanned the cliff face. "It's nearby. Look around and see if there's a cave or something." The map location was here, but he didn't see the location of a cave. The two women nodded, spreading out to the left and right, and began searching along the cliff face. Soon, dozens of meters away, Jia's shout came. "Fang Hao, see if it's this one." Hearing the shout, Fang Hao and Luo Li walked over. Below the cliff face in front of Jia, there was a dark cave slanting downwards. The entrance to the cave was large, about 5 meters high and 3 or 4 meters wide. The entrance was covered by climbing vines, so it would be difficult to discover this cave unless one was specifically searching for it rather than just passing by. "It should be here." Fang Hao looked inside through the vines. It was pitch black, and the visible range was very limited. "Clear the vines." Fang Hao stepped back a few steps, and the skeleton troll behind him stepped forward with a few swings of its axe. The vines blocking the cave entrance were cut and scattered on the ground. The location of the cave entrance was now completely exposed. "I'll use the gray sparrow to go in and take a look first." Fang Hao took out a skeleton gray sparrow from his backpack and jumped onto the bone dragon's back again before casting Divine Presence. He warned them again, just to be safe. "Don't mess around, you two, especially you." Jia, "Got it." Jia pouted, expressing her dissatisfaction. With Fang Hao singling her out, Fang Hao leaned back in the seat on the dragon's back and directly cast Divine Presence. A quiet blue soul fire ignited in the skeleton gray sparrow's pupils. It flapped its wings and flew into the cave entrance. The gray sparrow went deeper. The cave became darker. The supporting vertical beam skeletons inside the cave had already rotted and broken. and some mining tools were left scattered on both sides. The wooden handle parts had disappeared, leaving only the severely corroded metal parts, continuing deeper inside. After advancing more than 10 meters, scattered dry bones began to appear on the ground. And as the gray sparrow approached, clatter, clatter, the dry bones stood up directly, turning into a skeleton warrior. The gray sparrow dodged the skeleton warrior's attack and continued flying inward as it went deeper. The number of skeleton warriors increased, filling the cave ahead. Fang Hao had no choice but to control the gray sparrow to turn around and fly out of the cave. He canceled the divine presence state, and Jia asked, "How is it?" "Prepare for battle. A large group of skeletons is about to come out." Fang Hao stood up and said quickly, "As." Soon as his words fell, from inside the cave came dense footsteps and the sound of metal clashing against the cave walls. "Prepare dragon breath." Fang Hao leaped down from the dragon's back. But he wasn't anxious. He was too familiar with skeletons. He had seen much larger scenes. And facing these wild little skeletons, he didn't feel any fear. The bone dragon's body crouched on the ground, aiming its head at the dark cave. The sound of footsteps grew closer, and then a large number of undead could be seen dragging their feet, holding severely corroded weapons in their hands, walking step by step. Dragon breath. Fang Hao gently patted the bone dragon's massive body. Roar. The bone dragon's abdomen bulged high, and the next second, a black pillar of light sprayed from its mouth into the cave. The huge energy filled the cave. Under the black pillar of light, the bodies of the white-boned skeletons, like fine sand, were crushed and scattered on the ground. They had no power to resist at all. This was the first time Fang Hao had seen the bone dragon use death breath against undead. When used on living creatures, it would cause all the flesh and blood to peel off, eventually turning them into a pile of white bones. Now it seemed that using it on skeletons also had a very strong effect. Not even bone fragments were left. After the breath, inside the cave, peace was instantly restored. After waiting for 2 or 3 breaths, scattered footsteps could still be faintly heard inside the cave. There should still be some stragglers. Skeleton trolls surround the cave entrance. Attack freely when they come out. Fang Hao quickly deployed them. The skeleton trolls began to act according to orders. They left a space of about 2 meters in front of the cave and then surrounded the front of the cave in a U-shaped formation. Just as the deployment was completed, the skeletons inside the cave, with their dragging footsteps, walked out holding their broken mining picks high. But just as they walked out of the cave entrance, on both the left and right sides, 2 huge studded clubs fell respectively. Thud, thud, with 2 heavy muffled sounds. The bones of the first one to come out shattered and turned directly into a pile of bone fragments on the ground. Immediately after, the second skeleton also walked out. Thud, thud. Still 2 sounds. The second one also died directly. The third, the fourth. After the 6th one, the cave instantly quieted down. Fang Hao looked inside through the cave entrance. The ground was covered with bone ash and scattered weapons. "If you follow me, the rest stay outside and wait." Fang Hao selected about 30 skeleton trolls and took out several luminous stone lanterns from his storage space. He hung them on the ribs of 4 skeleton trolls. "What about us?" And Jia asked. "You and Luoli protect me outside. If we encounter something difficult to deal with, I'll arrange for you to go in." Currently, it seemed that the mine was filled with low-level skeletons, which the skeleton trolls could handle. Moreover, this mine didn't look very stable, and if it collapsed, it would be dangerous. All right then, this was a ruin, and there was no comfortable place for Fang Hao to lie down. He just had to sit back in the seat on the dragon's back and cast divine presence again, controlling the skeleton gray sparrow. He landed on a troll's shoulder and directly ordered, "Go. Enter the cave." The skeleton trolls entered the cave in an orderly formation. As they continued deeper, the cave became darker. The skeleton trolls carrying lanterns emitted the glow of the luminous stones from their chests, illuminating the surroundings. "Collect all the shadow stones on the ground," Fang Hao said. Shadow stones had already begun to appear ahead on the path. Where there are undead, shadow stones generally appear. Passing by the shadow stones, the skeleton trolls bent down one after another to collect them. His gaze followed a troll bending down, falling on a shadow stone. Fang Hao then discovered something was wrong. Wait, clear the ground there. Fang Hao ordered again. The skeleton trolls simply cleared away the rubble from the location Fang Hao indicated. Below, a long, thin metal track was revealed. Railway track? Fang Hao flapped his wings and landed on the metal track. Looking back along the direction of the track, he could see the railway tracks that had been exposed along the way. It seemed this really was a mine, and it had equipment like railway tracks and mine carts. The Cold Wind Mountain Range had a large number of mines, but they still relied on manual labor for transport and extraction, and they hadn't even built railway tracks and mine carts. It seemed the facilities in this mine were a bit more advanced. All right, continue forward. Fang Hao landed back on a skeleton troll again. The large group continued to advance as the mine became deeper. Two forks in the road appeared in front of them. The top of each fork had carved writing, but it was now unrecognizable. Fang Hao thought for a moment. Adhering to the rule of men to the left, women to the right, go left, the skeleton trolls began to enter the left fork. After advancing several dozen meters, the view instantly became clear. Fang Hao stood on the troll's shoulder and entered the depths of the mine. This was a very spacious mine, about the size of 3 or 4 basketball courts. The railway tracks on the ground were exposed. Severely damaged mine carts were filled with, or clatter, clatter. Just as Fang Hao was about to have someone collect the ore, a strange noise came from the front. A large number of skeleton warriors stood up, holding rusty iron swords and wearing tattered armor. They were much better equipped than the skeletons eliminated at the entrance. Skeletons awoke from their slumber one by one. They picked up their old weapons again, dragged their stiff bodies, and slowly stood up. They looked at the sudden intruders, paused for 2 or 3 seconds, picked up the weapons beside them, and walked towards the enemies step by step. From their appearance, it was clear the skeleton warriors here were better equipped than those eliminated at the cave entrance. However, even the best weapons, buried for such a long time, had already decayed beyond recognition. Fang Hao looked back behind him. They had already entered the depths of the mine, and had also taken a fork in the path. The location of the cave entrance was no longer visible. It would be too troublesome to lure these skeletons back and eliminate them using the bone dragon's breath. He wasn't sure if this mine could withstand a second dragon's breath attack. He roughly estimated the number of skeletons to be around 60 or 70. Letting the skeleton trolls handle them shouldn't be a problem. After making up his mind, Fang Hao directly gave the order, prepare for battle. Eliminate all enemies. After speaking, he flapped his wings and flew away from the shoulder of a skeleton troll. Upon receiving the order, the skeleton trolls raised the weapons in their hands and walked towards the enemy's direction. As both sides got closer, the skeleton trolls also started to run. 10 trolls ran with large strides, causing the mine to tremble slightly. Bang, bang, bang. The skeleton trolls, like mad bulls, directly crashed into the enemy skeleton formation. The maces in their hands were raised high and swung with full force. In the face of such power, skeletons were constantly sent flying, hitting the wall and sliding down, becoming a pile of white bones. The enemy skeletons were not without fighting ability. The long swords in their hands chopped at the skeleton troll's armor from all directions, clanging loudly. Fang Hao watched from a distance the whole time. In the state of a gray sparrow, his spiritual consciousness was highly integrated, but he himself had no attack power. He couldn't help much on the battlefield. Fortunately, the trolls were indeed brave, killing a large number of enemy skeletons. When the last skeleton was smashed into bone fragments with a single blow, the mine instantly fell silent. Clear the battlefield, see if there are any treasure chests, and transport all the ore out, Fang Hao said loudly. The skeleton trolls, who had just finished a major battle, did not stop to rest, and continued to collect the spoils of war. According to Fang Hao's orders, a damaged minecart was pushed over. The minecart, with only one wheel remaining, was pushed by the troll's brute force, creating a piercing noise as it rubbed against the rails. Stop! This is too torturous. Fang Hao landed on the minecart and said to the troll at the same time. Fang Hao, who landed on the minecart, also received information about the Stone 45. Iron 12, copper 6, mithril Ford. Mithril? Fang Hao's heart instantly stirred, whether it was the pigmen mine or the mine in the cold wind mountains. Or extraction was ongoing. But there was no mithril in these places. Could it be that this mine could extract mithril? Mithril is a rare material often used in magical items. Mithril appeared in the making of the wood root staff and the alchemist's embroidered robe. It could be said that if Fang Hao wanted to develop magic or equip a large-scale mage army, he had to have a continuous source of mithril ore, and the mine before him gave him hope. Don't push the minecart. Carry the ore out, Fang Hao said. The skeleton troll before him dropped the minecart with only one wheel remaining and walked towards the cave entrance carrying the ore. Fang Hao continued to fly towards another minecart. Stone 55, iron 18. Mithril 8. Stone 42, iron 9, copper 5. Mithril 1. Stone 57, iron 36. Fang Hao successively checked several locations. Whether it was mine carts or scattered piles of ore, mithril could basically be found. Fang Hao felt his heart pounding violently, and he could confirm that this was a mine from which mithril could be extracted. Move all the ore out. Hurry up, Fang Hao urged again. He couldn't wait to clear the mine and arrange for people to mine the mithril. The skeleton trolls sped up and transported all the collected spoils of war outside the cave. The spoils of war were cleared. However, no treasure chests were brought over. Fang Hao, not believing it, flew around the entire space himself and indeed found no trace of a treasure chest. There must be a treasure chest if it wasn't here. Then it should be on the other fork in the path, outside the cave, ore and equipment dropped by skeletons were piled up separately. Fang Hao flew out and replenished his troops too. 30. He continued to enter the mine. This time at the fork, Fang Hao led the skeleton trolls directly to the right. The narrow passage was smoothly excavated. There were also traces of torches left on the walls every few meters. After proceeding for more than 10 meters, they entered another spacious hall similar to the one on the left. Compared to collecting or on the left, this place seemed more like a storage area for tools and an office space. The rotten tables and chairs and various mining tools in the corner could be easily identified. Stepping into the hall, the familiar sound came again. Rustle. A large number of skeletons stood up again. Holding rusty weapons, they launched an attack on everyone. Whoosh. Whoosh. A reddish-orange magic arrow shot from behind the skeleton warriors. It was a fire arrow. However, the fire arrow's aim seemed to be poor, flying from the air and crashing heavily into the stone wall 5 meters to the side, sending sparks flying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Another series of magic arrows exploded around like fireworks, illuminating the dark mine. A fire arrow exploded beside Fang Hao, and the stones it stirred up instantly broke one of Fang Hao's bird legs. Although he felt no pain, his body suddenly tilted to one side, while Fang Hao flapped his wings to stabilize himself. He also took this opportunity to see the situation of the distant enemies clearly. Behind the approaching skeleton warriors stood a squad of undead mages. There were only a few wooden staffs left in their hands, and their robes hung on them like rags. You 10 follow me. The rest attack and eliminate all enemies. Magic arrows were constantly exploding beside him. Fang Hao gave orders loudly. 20 skeleton trolls launched an attack on the skeleton warriors, while Fang Hao flapped his wings, circled with the 10-man squad, and outflanked the undead mages in the back row. Even though the undead mages had a higher rank, their intelligence was still not high. Magic was constantly being consumed on the trolls directly in front, and in close combat, the magic arrows also caused casualties on their own side. Soon, Fang Hao led the 10 trolls around to the side of the undead mages. Attack! Kill those mages! Fang Hao shouted. The skeleton trolls launched their attack, charging in, swinging their maces and pickaxes, killing the undead mages. Both sides engaged in a fierce battle. Half an hour later, the battle ended. Clear the battlefield and look for treasure chests, Fang Hao said, standing on one leg. After the great battle, the skeleton trolls began collecting various spoils of war, weapons, equipment, and various ores were collected and transported outside. Fang Hao waited silently on the sidelines. Before long, among the spoils being carried out. He saw a golden treasure chest being carried by a troll. This also relieved him. He was afraid of working for nothing and not even getting a treasure chest that he canceled. The divine advent state. Having woken up from the dragon's back, and Jia and Luo Li didn't go to play but sat aside chatting. Seeing Fang Hao wake up, they directly asked, "How was it?" "Not bad. Quite a big harvest," Fang Hao replied. Fang Hao was quite satisfied with this battle, besides obtaining a golden treasure chest. The most important thing was this vein. A vein where mithril could be mined is not something one can easily encounter. Now that the enemies in the mine have been cleared, he can arrange for people to mine the mithril, or this is to prepare in advance for the future development of a magic legion. "Oh," and Jia replied simply. While the few were chatting, the skeleton trolls in the mine also came out one after another with their spoils. One of the trolls, carrying a treasure chest, came directly to Fang Hao, threw the treasure chest on the ground, and turned to leave. Fang Hao came down from the bone dragon and directly opened the treasure chest. Obtained Whisper Staff Crafting Blueprint, Blue. White Steel Pickaxe Crafting Blueprint. Minecart Track Crafting Blueprint. Minecart Crafting Blueprint. Shadow Stone X32. Warcoins X202. Seeing the items that appeared in the treasure chest, a smile couldn't help but appear on Fang Hao's face. Not only did he get a staff for mages, but the rest were mining blueprints. They were all useful blueprints to him. Whisper Staff. Hard Tough Wood X3. Fine Iron X1. Magic Essence X3. Mithril X5. Trace of Death X1. Description: the whispers of the dead fill the caster's ears. They speak of death and cold and await your arrival. Good heavens, this staff doesn't seem very auspicious. Fortunately, the territory's mage legion is itself undead. Whether or not it whispers won't have any effect on the undead mages. A blue staff is perfect for replacing the green wooden root staff, increasing the attack power of the undead mage army. He continued to check the following blueprints. White Steel Pickaxe. Hard Tough Wood X1. White Steel Ingot X2. Thick Tough Leather X1. Minecart Track Wood X5. Iron X5. Cast Iron Block X3. Minecart Wood X12. Iron X15. Cast Iron Block X8. These three blueprints are easy to understand. Although they are not equipment blueprints, they are necessary for mining, especially the minecart tracks and minecarts. Equipping the mine with these can greatly improve mining efficiency and reduce the workload of the miners. Their value is not less than obtaining a blue blueprint. Minecart tracks are calculated by the meter, and Fang Hao has a hundredfold amplification, so he is not afraid of material consumption. After returning, he will make them and distribute them to the various mines. All the blueprints were checked. Using the Lord's book, they were all collected. Except for the stones, the rest of the spoils were put into the storage space. Alright, use these stones to block the entrance first. Fang Hao pointed to the entrance. The skeleton trolls continued to work, sealing off the entire entrance. This mine will definitely be arranged for mining, but not now. This place is a certain distance from the Mannheim market, and it would be somewhat fanciful to mine across such a long distance. The best way is still like the Pigman village. Arrange an affiliated village near the mine, or arrange for people to build a village before mining the mine. Before long, the mine was completely sealed off. Fang Hao continued to open the world map to see the location of the next spider thicket. "Where are we going next?" And Jia asked curiously, her arm resting on Fang Hao's shoulder. The soft touch of Zilong Bao came from the arm. "It's still early. We can go to the spider thicket again," Fang Hao said casually. "Okay, then let's leave quickly. It's better to finish early and go back for dinner." "I'm looking at the location," Fang Hao said unhappily, identifying the direction. The group remounted the bone dragon. They flew directly towards the spider thicket. The distance wasn't far. After flying for about 3 to 5 minutes, they had already reached the target location on the map. Below the clouds was a dense forest. The dense canopy was covered with white spider webs, like a huge white gauze. It enveloped the entire thicket, slightly lowering the flight altitude. One could even see small spiders with green bodies and white spots, weaving and crawling on top of the spider webs. Just as everyone was frowning and checking, a violent shaking came from the forest. Below, strange spider creatures climbed up the treetops. These spiders had human bodies, but their lower bodies were giant spiders. They possessed the spider's legs and huge, bloated abdomen. It wasn't a person riding on a giant spider, but the two were originally one. Fang Hao had heard of centaurs. This was the first time he had seen spider centaurs. What is this thing so ugly? Fang Hao frowned and said. Before anyone could answer, the spider archers below began to attack the bone dragon in the sky. Swish, swish, swish. Arrows shot towards the sky. Attack, dragon breath. Fang Hao ordered directly. The bone dragon swooped down, and the death breath in its mouth swept towards the dense spider area below, wherever it passed. The flesh and blood on the humanoid giant spiders melted and fell off. Swish, swish, swish. The dense forest obscured the view, and white spider silk shot out, attempting to pull the bone dragon hovering in the air down, but the 10th order bone dragons' strength and attributes far exceeded. The spider creatures below. It easily tore the spider silk apart. It continued to hover, spewing out death breath downwards. The black energy beam would not set the forest on fire, but the dense death energy instantly withered and decayed the trees wherever it passed. And the spider silk dome was also tattered. It looked like in another 2 or 3 rounds, this spider nest would be completely destroyed, just as the 11 bone dragons were hovering in the air, preparing for the third breath. The humanoid spider on the canopy tied a linen cloth to one end of the longbow and waved it vigorously towards the sky. They surrendered, and Jia said, "Surrendered? How can you tell?" Tying a cloth to a weapon, according to the orc way, is a signal of surrender, and Jia explained. Are spiders considered orcs? I don't know. And Jia shook her head. Regardless of whether they belong to the orcs or not, it could be determined that these spiders at least belong to intelligent races. Otherwise, they wouldn't know how to surrender. Fang Hao thought for a while, then used divine advent again, using the lame skeleton gray bird to fly down. The other party didn't attack, but just looked warily at the approaching skeleton gray bird. Approaching the thicket, Fang Hao said, "I accept your surrender. Let your leader bring everyone out of the thicket into the open space on the west side. I'll give you 10 minutes, otherwise we will continue to attack." After speaking, the skeleton gray bird turned and flew back. 10 minutes later, a large number of spiders and humanoid giant spiders emerged from the dense forest, without the cover of the dense canopy. All the spider types were exposed before Fang Hao. There were quite a few spiders, after being repeatedly swept by death breath. There were still at least several thousand. That the spider swarm was divided into 2 forms. One type was normal spiders, about the size of a wash basin. The other type was humanoid giant spiders, a hybrid form of human and giant spider, making them close to the size of a giant bear. Amidst the crowd of spiders, a massive figure walked out from the rear. This was a woman with the appearance of a human female upper body and a spider lower body, with green skin bearing black patterns and a physique close to that of an elephant. Her 4 legs were like sharp blades, yet her steps gave off a sense of elegance. The woman walked to the middle of the 2 groups, looking at the white-haired, beast-eared girl who had been waiting ahead. She spoke softly, "My lord, you." The giant spider woman bowed slightly, but was interrupted by the white-haired girl mid-sentence. The white-haired girl simply pointed to her shoulder. Standing there was a limping skeleton gray sparrow. It's your leader?" The giant spider woman's eyes widened in disbelief. Anjia nodded. Fang Hao was also observing the giant spider woman before him, spinner of fate spider woman, 10th tier. To be honest, Fang Hao didn't particularly like spiders, especially their numerous legs and large abdomens. Although the woman before him had a decent appearance, her spider body still made him feel somewhat uncomfortable. However, what surprised Fang Hao was that this woman was actually a 10th tier unit, that if she participated in the hero trial, she could become a hero. The spinner of fate spider woman saw that Anjia wasn't teasing her, changed direction, and bowed slightly to the one-legged skeleton bird on the other's shoulder. "My lord, we meant no harm, and hope to end this conflict peacefully. Are you the leader?" Fang Hao spoke, hearing the skeleton gray sparrow suddenly speak. The spinner of fate spider woman still showed a look of surprise. 1 could even clearly see her swallowing saliva in her throat. Yes, my lord," the spinner of fate spider woman replied. "What is your name?" Fang Hao continued to ask. Domina, my lord. All right, Domina, I was passing through this area with my subordinates, but your people attacked me. How do you think this matter should be resolved? Fang Hao questioned sternly. Just as they arrived above the dense forest, it was indeed the humanoid giant spiders wielding bows and arrows who first launched the attack on them. My lord, this was a misunderstanding. Recently, a group of despicable kobolds attacked us, and my subordinates were too nervous and mistook their target. Attacking rashly, Domina explained. I don't want to hear excuses, I want to hear how this should be handled. We can offer compensation. Domina quickly replied that 10th tier bone dragons were already beyond their power scope. Even Domina had only just advanced to the 10th tier last year, and the remaining tribe members were not high-tiered. They relied more on the cover of the dense forest and their numerical advantage. However, when facing 11 10th tier bone dragons, which were also aerial units, their spider lair became a target, allowing the other side to attack. Their own silk spitting and arrows were like stones thrown by a child. Weak and powerless, after more than half of her tribe members died, she had no other option. She could only choose to surrender, even if it meant paying a heavy price. I don't need your compensation. You only have one choice, and that is to surrender. I will still let you manage this dense forest and give you the opportunity to advance into a hero. Fang Hao directly shattered all her thoughts. Domina moved her feet, turning as if to retreat. Anjia, however, was a step ahead, blocking her path back to the spider ranks, her hands already fitted with metal knuckle dusters. Domina's expression instantly turned ugly, and she stared coldly at Fang Hao. Are you bandits? At least this bandit is willing to give you a chance. Make your choice. The bone dragons slowly formed a circle, completely surrounding all the spiders, under the passive skill dragon might. Some spiders even became completely stiff and fell to the ground. Beginning to convulse, Domina looked at everything before her, her face grim. After a moment of silence, she finally gritted her teeth and said, I agree to surrender. Let my tribe members return. Good. Being pragmatic benefits both of us. Fang Hao turned and flew towards the rear. Come with me, sign the contract, and you can all go back. All right. Arriving at the rear of the skeleton ranks, Fang Hao deactivated the divine descent state, surrounded by the skeleton trolls. He found a blank slave contract in the Lord's book. Just press your handprint, Fang Hao said. Domina looked at the human tightly surrounded by trolls and frowned, saying, Who are you? I'm supposed to sign a contract with you, not your leader. I am the one who just spoke with you. It was merely some magic, Fang Hao said, opening his palm. The single-legged skeleton gray sparrow from before landed directly. Domina's mind was now a blur. She increasingly couldn't understand why Fang Hao and these people would suddenly appear, and they just happened to be discovered by the vigilant giant spider archers, leading to a battle between the two sides. She even felt some regret that she shouldn't have come out for any ceasefire negotiations. Now, this contract, she couldn't not sign it even if she wanted to. Domina's face was grim. She pricked her finger and gently pressed it onto the contract. Light merged into Domina's body, and the contract was completed. Domina's current loyalty, 43 to. Holy crap, only 43. Fortunately, the contract was signed. Otherwise, with just a normal surrender, she would definitely try to find a way to kill me. Immediately after, a prompt for a subordinate village appeared. Webweaver's lair voluntarily becomes your subordinate village. You can confirm in the Lord's book. Fang Hao directly opened the Lord's book, chose to confirm. Webweaver's lair has become your subordinate village. You can rename the village here and control all resources within the village. Renaming wasn't necessary, and the name Webweaver was quite nice. How did it feel like this name was more suitable for a clothing store than his own bone fabric shop? The location of the Webweaver's lair was very close to the mithril mine.at that time. Using this place as the mining and storage area for the mithril mine would also be a good spot. Blueprint unlocked. Broodmother Giant Spider Lair Construction Blueprint. Broodmother Giant Spider Lair. Wood 2200, hardwood 1500. Flexible leather 850, spider silk 765. Abundant essence 1. Description: the sense of security provided by the lair can accelerate the reproductive speed of the broodmother giant spider, allowing it to continuously produce spider young. Broodmother giant spider? Fang Hao's gaze swept over the stern-faced domina before him. It couldn't be referring to her, could it? So fertile. All right, are you satisfied now? Domina said coldly. All right, let your tribe members go back. Take me to see the dense forest. Fang Hao only now walked out from behind the trolls. There was nothing he could do. Fang Hao was truly vulnerable at this moment that if a hero died, he could use the hero altar to revive them. If he died, then he was truly dead. Out of necessity, he had to be careful in everything he did. All right, you're in charge here now. Domina turned her head and moved her sharp legs towards the dense forest. Fang Hao followed behind with his people, and also checked Domina's attributes. Spinner of Fate Spider Woman, 10th tier. Spinning Fate Spider Woman, Tier 10. Faction, Spider Folk racial traits. Mortal, Sunlight sensitivity, Spider climb. Spider monster casting skills. Multi-attack, Leg longsword, Venom spray. Calamity innate skills. Intermediate combat mastery. Intermediate stealth mastery. Intermediate magic mastery. Advanced movement mastery. Sunlight sensitivity. When exposed to sunlight, this unit's attacks are disadvantaged, and all attributes are reduced. Spider climb. This unit can climb on difficult terrain surfaces, including but not limited to ceilings, trees, cliffs, and other special terrain. Spider monster casting. Spinning Fate Spider Women are natural casters. Without the need to learn and master, they can cast spells such as Venom Spray and Calamity. At the same time, they possess strong magic learning abilities. Multi-attack. Multiple legs provide this unit with the innate condition to launch multiple attacks. Leg longsword. Tough legs are comparable to sharp longswords, dealing piercing damage to target units. Venom spray. Sprays venomous foam, dealing venom damage to units in front. Calamity. Targets up to 5 creatures and cast Calamity. Target units enter a weakened state, receiving an additional 20% damage when attacked. Description: they are repelled by mortals and driven into the depths of the gloomy regions, becoming hermits and hunters, wandering alone or leading giant spiders to occupy areas near their nests. Domina's attributes are quite good. Although she is not yet a hero, her attributes are not far off from one. Especially the spider monster casting skill. She is born with 2 spells and also possesses strong magic learning abilities. When training her, it might be beneficial to lean towards magic, and multi-attack and leg longsword give her a certain degree of melee ability, making a melee mage a good choice as well. Fang Hao and the others returned from the rear. Domina glanced at her worried tribesmen and said, "All right, the matter has been resolved. Everyone, return to the dense forest, go back to your posts." Russell. The spiders and spider folk obeyed the command and directly turned back into the dense forest. Spider Archer, Tier 5. Spider Warrior, Tier 4. Giant Spider Hatchling, Tier 1. Fang Hao quickly checked the names of the few spider people around him. The tiers of the spider people were basically at the Tier 4 and Tier 5 level. After looking at several, he didn't find any that had broken through to Tier 6. And among the spider swarm, the most numerous were the giant spider hatchlings. Their bodies were the size of wash basins, numbering in the hundreds, even thousands. It seems that a complete professional system and division of labor have evolved here. Although they are called spider folk, they are no different from normal human cities. They all belong to command species. Only their appearance differs greatly. Fang Hao and the others followed behind Domina and also entered the dense forest along the main road. The environment of the spider forest was well preserved. Sunlight passed through the leaves, casting orange beams, if it weren't for the white spider webs covering the trees on both sides, and the giant spider hatchlings climbing onto the webs and staring at them. Perhaps it would have been a good time to enjoy the forest scenery. Continuing forward along the road, the location of the weaver's camp was already visible. A wooden wall 5 to 6 meters high, topped with a white dome woven from white spider webs. At this moment, countless giant spider hatchlings were repairing the spider web torn open by the dragon's breath. Just now, in front of the camp gate was a giant ancient tree. Its trunk was as thick as a round table, and its crown was lush with branches and leaves, wrapped in white spider webs, looking like a giant marshmallow standing there. And on the spider webs of the ancient tree hung humanoid prey wrapped in silk, like white mummies. occasionally twisting and struggling that it seems they haven't died yet. Fang Hao's brows furrowed slightly. The scene before him made it hard not to think of it. Monsters that hunt intelligent races and treat humans and orcs as reserve food. What are these? Domina glanced at the ancient tree, her voice still cold. Some kobolds who thought we were easy to bully. If it weren't for them, the nest wouldn't be on high alert. And it wouldn't have. Domina didn't finish the rest. But the look she gave Fang Hao conveyed the meaning that if they hadn't been on high alert, the spider archers wouldn't have rashly shot arrows at the bone dragon, thus escalating the situation to what it is now. Fang Hao didn't say much either. He came here this time for the map. Even if the spider archers hadn't shot those arrows, this battle would have been unavoidable. Shifting his gaze from the mummies on the ancient tree, Fang Hao continued to follow Domina into the camp. Traces of the death breath still lingered around, but the scene before him was still spectacular. White spider webs covered the entire camp, connecting the spider nests of various sizes like suspension bridges. They were arranged in a staggered manner, giving a sense of postmodern architectural aesthetics. "It's very beautiful here," Fang Hao praised. Domina didn't answer. Leading the group forward, in the center of the entire camp was a house made of spider silk and wood, suspended in the air by white spider webs, judging by the size. This should be the chieftain's hall. The group stepped onto the road woven from spider webs and entered the house. The entire house was very sturdy, without the imagined feeling of shaking. There were no seats here. Domina, with her massive body, simply laid down on the ground, her gaze fixed on Fang Hao and the others. "All right, you finished your tour here. You should tell me what you're really here to do," Domina said coldly. "Domina, you should understand your situation. Basic respect will make things easier for you and your tribe." Fang Hao reminded her calmly that Domina's attitude should be related to her low loyalty. But Fang Hao also needed to remind her to recognize her situation, that a title was a small matter. But if she dared to disobey his orders or play any tricks in the future, Fang Hao would kill her without hesitation. Then he would convert her into an obedient undead and continue to work for him. Domina's expression changed slightly. "Then how should I address you?" "A word like Lord or Liege will make our relationship much smoother." "All right, Lord Liege, you have seen my place. Can you tell me what you want us to do?" Domina said. She used a respectful title, but her tone was still flat. "It's nothing much. I will be developing a mine to the south, and I will need your assistance then." Fang Hao leaned against the spider silk wall behind him, which didn't feel sticky. "Developing a mine? Where is there a mine nearby?" Domina asked in surprise. "There is a mine, of course. I can take you to see it when the time comes." "Are your tribesmen capable of developing a mine?" Fang Hao looked at Domina. The spider swarm was somewhat similar to Fang Hao's undead. They both had methods for rapidly producing troops to gain an advantage. However, the undead converted skeletons, while the spiders relied on the mother spider to produce. Hearing Fang Hao's words, Domina's brows furrowed slightly. She turned back and looked at her enormous spider body, saying, "Do you want us to mine or? This kind of work is not suitable for us to do." Although Domina didn't refuse, her words clearly showed her opposition. Whether they were spiderlings or giant spiders, they were still better at weaving webs in dark mines. Not mining or ordinary giant spider hatchlings only knew how to weave webs and couldn't mine ORE.AS for spiderling shooters and spiderling warriors. They all had large spider lower bodies and bloated bellies that it was difficult for them to move around in the mines. And they weren't suitable for mining or, furthermore, there weren't many spiderling soldiers. And they couldn't all be assigned to work in the mines. Fang Hao shook his head and said, "You don't need to worry about that. I will arrange for miners to do the excavation work. But the safety of the mining area, the transportation of ore, and the maintenance of equipment will all need to be your responsibility." This plan had already been proven effective with the pigmen. Labor skeletons would handle the ore mining, while the pigmen would be responsible for all other tasks. Living creatures were not as easy to use as his labor skeletons. "Oh, that's no problem. When you bring the miners, I can arrange for their food and lodging." Domina breathed a sigh of relief. Food and lodging? Skeletons didn't need food or lodging. Of course, Fang Hao didn't explain much. When the labor skeletons arrived, Domina would naturally understand. "How did you get into a fight with the kobolds?" Fang Hao suddenly remembered the kobolds hanging outside the camp. Since this place had become an affiliated village, its safety still needed to be guaranteed. Alas, Domina sighed softly and explained, after reaching Tier 10, I started preparing for the method to become a hero. Due to my identity, I prepared some gifts to transport to the city in the east. Domina's story was simple. Her identity was not recognized by the orcs, so she couldn't use the merit trial ground normally. In her helplessness, she prepared heavy gifts, planning to bribe her way into using the merit trial ground for the hero trial. In the orc city to the east, she didn't know if the news leaked or if she just happened to encounter the kobolds. During the transportation of the gifts, a battle occurred between the two sides. Although her side won the battle, but the kobolds were like persistent pests, often coming to harass them. Fortunately, in the dense forest, the kobolds' several attacks did not achieve their desired effect. It even provided more food for the broodmother giant spider, which could increase the production of spider hatchlings. You're not the broodmother giant spider? Fang Hao looked at Domina. Domina was startled and said, of course I'm not. That's the broodmother giant spider's nest. Once they start producing, they won't easily leave the nest. As she spoke, she got up, pushed open the window, and pointed outside. Fang Hao looked in the direction she pointed. Hanging there was a huge nest, and a large green spider was coiled inside. It was lying there, its size close to that of a tank parked there. It just lies in there and doesn't come out to move around. Anya asked from the side. It doesn't move. It will come out when it changes nests. So all these little spiders are her offspring? Lola also asked. Yes. Will the little spiders also grow this big? No. The number of broodmother giant spiders is very small. Only after this one dies will another broodmother grow from the spiderlings and enter the nest. Ahem. Seeing the topic drift off, Fang Hao had no choice but to lightly cough twice. When the three looked at him, Fang Hao continued, how do you plan to deal with the kobold situation? Fang Hao didn't really take the kobolds to heart, but if left unchecked, these guys might cause trouble in the mines and destroy the established facilities, which would be troublesome. What? You're willing to help? Domina glanced at him lightly. If your tone and attitude were a bit softer, perhaps I would help you solve this problem, Fang Hao said. This? Domina was slightly taken aback. She had originally just wanted to mock him, even though they had signed a contract. She didn't think Fang Hao would be willing to help. The contract was just to ensure the master's rights, and the contracted party was entirely in a passive state. More often than not, masters wouldn't care about the life and death of slaves, and might even sell them for a good price at the right time or use them as cannon fodder. She hadn't expected that Fang Hao would help her, and only required her tone to be a bit softer. You. As Domina just opened her mouth, a spiderling shooter rushed in. It shouted. The kobolds have gathered outside the forest. More than 1,000 of them have come, and it looks like they're going to set the forest on fire. What? Where did they get so many people? Domina's expression instantly became tense. Whether it was the number of people or setting the forest on fire, it was an unfavorable situation for Domina and the others here, especially setting fires. With one fire, if it spread, even their home would be gone. What would they fight the enemy with then? There's no mistake. The number is only more, not less. The spiderling shooter's tone was firm. Domina's body trembled slightly. Were they going to die here today? Just when she didn't know how to respond, her gaze suddenly fell upon Fang Hao beside her. Right. He just said he would help her. Domina hurriedly came before Fang Hao, her spider body prostrated on the ground, her forehead touching the floor. My lord, please forgive my rudeness. I beg you to save me and my people. Domina's voice trembled, faintly carrying a hint of a sob. The spiderling shooter beside her gaped, watching the scene before her in surprise. Their chieftain was actually performing such a grand gesture. She secretly glanced around, feeling that leaving now would be too obvious. She could only follow suit, prostrating herself, her forehead touching the ground. All right, Domina, I agree to your request. But from now on, if you dare to let your personal emotions interfere with the tasks I assign, I will kill you all the same. Fang Hao's voice turned colder again. Domina's body trembled slightly. Yes, my lord, I understand. All right, Domina, get up now. Gather your people at the edge of the dense forest. Ash Sparrow will tell you what to do next, Fang Hao said in a commanding tone. Yes, I understand. My lord. Domina stood up and replied softly. Spinning fate spider, Maiden Domina's loyalty to you has increased by 10 points. Current loyalty, 53. Huh, what's going on? He had just lost his temper with her, and her loyalty increased by 10 points instead, but couldn't figure it out. Domina left with the spiderling shooter. Fang Hao also left the chieftain's nest with Anya and Lola, leaving the weaver camp. The three returned to where the bone dragon was parked. They got on the bone dragon, soared into the sky, and flew towards the north side of the dense forest. When they arrived overhead, they could see the kobolds gathered below. The number was even more than imagined. Some kobolds had already lit torches. It seemed they really intended to set the forest on fire. Fang Hao lightly patted the bone dragon. Prepare dragon breath. On the open ground outside the dense forest, a large number of kobolds were gathered here. Their armor was a mess. Iron armor, leather armor, and some even just had 2 wooden planks covering their chests. The weapons in their hands were also varied, including iron weapons and wooden clubs, quite a variety. They were all gathered here, waiting for the next command from the kobold chieftain. They had been clashing with the spiders in the dense forest for over a week. Both sides had casualties, but the kobolds had lost patience. They planned to wipe out all these hateful and ugly spiders in one fell swoop. Thump, thump, thump. Behind the kobolds, 4 kobolds came over, carrying a wooden sedan chair. Leaning on the wooden sedan chair was a bare-chested kobold wearing blue jeans. Chieftain, those spiders have gathered. When should we light the fire to burn the mountain? A kobold stepped forward and said eagerly. The kobold chieftain remained silent, putting a large gold bracelet to his ear. Listening to the tick-tock sound coming from inside, he glanced slightly at the dense forest ahead. He said lazily, "Let's do it. Today, I will make sure those damn spiders all die here." "Yes, chieftain." His subordinate agreed and relayed the order. The kobolds began to prepare. The vanguard assembled, while the kobolds in the rear ignited the carts filled with dry grass and wood. Attack! Kill! The kobolds roared loudly and launched their attack on the dense forest.